Good morning, good morning. It's Spencer Todd, really excited to be here. I'm CEO, co-founder of FormlyAI. I know we're a few minutes behind, so I can run through this quickly if we have to. But today I have the pleasure of talking to you about solving medical device certification challenges with AI for startups. It's hard to fit all this into a 10-minute talk, so it's going to be fairly high level, but let's get into it. How do we solve medical device certification challenges with AI for startups? All right, and that's the end of my talk. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm just kidding. This is what everybody thinks is the answer to solving medical device certification. And yet, OpenAI is a great tool for people to use. In this talk, I'm going to go over kind of the benefits of using solutions like this, what are the pitfalls of doing that, and kind of how we do it at FormlyAI to create a great product for you all. But you can't really just dump all of your information into OpenAI and then just hope for the best and think that you're going to get your medical certification done at that point in time. So I don't know if there's any sailors or boaters here, but I always kind of liken first-time medical device certification compliance to sailing through the fog with no GPS, no compass, and trying to find land. And in this case, like finding land is essentially getting your certification, or at least going through your conformity assessment. You don't know if you did it right or not until you get to that point. And so a lot of people, for the first time, there's like no checkpoints along the way. You're kind of lost. You're not sure if you're actually on the right path to getting a successful certification. So it can be really tough for these startups to do this. And let's talk about why. Because a typical certification, what you're looking at is over 75 documents. This all depend on device type and market and things like that. This can include device specifications, processes, testing, verification, validation, reports, clinical evaluation reports, all kinds of different documentation. You're looking at over 8+ different international standards, more if you have a very complex device, and regulations. And you can see how this might take like 6 to 12 months. We've found on average people are paying around 100,000 euros for this. Again, it all depends, but it can be really daunting for people. Another thing I always tell people is that there are 100 ways to achieve compliance, and there's also 90 ways to do it really poorly. And so what does it mean to do compliance poorly? You'll find out essentially during your audit if you did something poorly, because they'll tell you about it. But also, your processes and your documentation have to fit your company and your product, right? So you could have a 20-page process on doing design control, but maybe a 5-page process would actually fit for the product that you're trying to make. So there's different ways of doing that. And so if you're thinking, I'm just going to throw a bunch of my information and ask, ChatGPT to write my, documentation for me, it's probably going to come out in that bucket of 90 ways to do compliance poorly. So let's start by asking what not to do with AI. So the first thing I always tell people, it's not going to completely replace a quality and regulatory medical device expert. So unfortunately, we're just not there yet. And the reason is it's great at providing some writing tools for you, providing suggestions and things like that. But there's specific things with the regulatory process, whether it's knowing exactly what device classification you are, what's kind of like the best path to market for you, that really a medical device expert is going to know better than asking AI. So I'm glad no one left the room right after that first bullet. So the second thing is don't ask it to build a full document for you on a single go. So there are documents that you're going to create which are like clinical evaluation reports, which can be over 150. I've seen them in the thousands of pages. So obviously just throwing a bunch of information in and saying, just build me this document, it's not going to work for you. And so the other thing to keep in mind is not to ask it to give you industry best practices. The reason for this is because it's not actually publicly known, a lot of these things. A lot of it's from experience from experts going through this process with auditors themselves and understanding what the best practices are. And then the last thing is, don't ask it to find like clinical studies for you or look at competitor data. It's trained on older data. It might look up like an old instructions for use on a competitor and pull like the wrong intended use or something like that. And also clinical data needs to come from trusted validated sources, whether that's like clinical trial databases or scientific publication databases. So don't ask it to do that. This is what not to do with AI. So what should you ask AI to do? Use it for what it's used best for. Summaries, analyses on data. Have it give suggestions for things like product user needs, requirements, risks. It's really great at this kind of stuff. I think the important thing to keep in mind here too is break up your asks for AI into small stepwise pieces. So I already talked about not asking for full documents in one go, but also it's really important to break it up, provide suggestions to AI for it to give you information, but also have the right context there so it can give you a highly accurate suggestion based on what you're asking it to do. The other thing it's actually very good at is doing gap analyses. I kind of call these sanity checks for a lot of people. So it may not give you all of the checkbox list of everything that might be missing from your product, but if you have a glaring inconsistency in something that you're trying to put together for your medical device compliance, whether it's regulatory or quality, AI is kind of a good person to ask about that kind of stuff. And then potential approaches for device classification and regulatory strategy. Like I mentioned, an expert's going to be your best bet here, but if you're kind of trying to play around with understanding your classification or what requirements are there for you to go to market, you'll get a good overview of that from them. But you always want to kind of lean back on your expert at that point in time when you're actually executing your strategy for what's going to be the right move. So how do we use AI at Formly? So we use a lot of different data points in our system. And part of that reason is what I mentioned earlier. When we're using AI, we want it to have the right context at the right time. And so we pull in industry standards, personal insider experience from my role at the FDA and as a medical device consultant, audit experience from our clients, compliance workflows, device information. All this kind of fits together to provide the right information to our system when we need it. And so this is a totally high-level look at what happens when you use the software, but essentially this is the basic process. Is our users come in, they give us their data, their device data, and that sits as like a single source of truth in our system. And then we can build them essentially a roadmap of all the requirements that they need in order to be compliant. We use that information as context for AI and for dependencies, and then we can pre-build documents based on templates that we know work for this type of process. So what you get out of that is your full certification documentation, which our users can edit, review, and approve on their way to certification. And what you can think of, essentially, as we go along, and let's say you want to make a post-market, or you want to make a product change, or you have some post-market data you want to incorporate into the device, you can just kind of go through that process again. It's really easy, update things that need to be updated, and then go to stay compliant after that with your certification. Or let's say we have clients that go through audit learnings and we find, auditors actually are liking to see documents in this format, or they're giving us a lot more feedback on how clinical benefits should be written. We can build that into the back end for our users, which is really nice. Or let's say there's an update to an ISO standard, or the medical device coordination group comes out with a new guidance or something like that. We can build that in there for users. So what you're getting is the most up-to-date, most compliant version of this of quality regulatory software at any given time. And so it's a system that's easy for maintaining your data. You get an intelligent AI framework around your device. And then, like I mentioned, because of these added updates that we get for each kind of contact point with a notified body or conformity assessment, you're getting the most compliant and adaptive QA/RA system. And so I just want to show you a couple screenshots of what this looks like. So we have a certification roadmap. This is just an example of what this looks like. We build in kind of quality management system aspects to it, but it walks you through the whole design development process. And then also, you can see up here that we have these little buttons on the top left. Essentially, we walk our users through stepwise this kind of AI suggestion document building process. And so this is an example of a preliminary hazard analysis that we ask the AI to do, which pulls in all the information that the user's already provided with us, plus some information from ISO 14791, which is the risk standard, which you can kind of put all together here to give the user. And so they can edit it, they can change it, they can do whatever they want to it. And so by breaking it up into these small kind of stepwise pieces, we're able to get really highly accurate suggestions from the AI and build documentation out that way. So what has this resulted in for the people that we've worked with? We've seen about a 10x speed to certification readiness. We actually had one group just go through. They have a class 1 device and essentially get ready for certification in 4 weeks from nothing, which is great. We've never seen that before. We actually didn't expect it to go that quickly, if I'm being completely honest. It's also an intuitive system. We want something that's very easy for people to use. It's built on industry standards. And we found that actually using AI for this process and getting people ready for market faster and easier has saved people on average 50,000 euros along the way. So the idea is really to make compliance easier for people, right? So if you can make this process really intuitive, and a lot faster than any team, either a small team that maybe has like 1 or 2 people, but also larger teams can see the benefit of this. And I think startup companies especially are looking for ways to kind of get the most out of their small teams, and this is a really great option for them to kind of, not only create the documentation for the first time, but let's say you want to do, a new product release, in a year or something like that. That whole process becomes a whole lot less daunting. And so that was pretty much the full talk. I could go into a lot more detail on AI, but I want to keep it high level for everybody. And I just want to say thanks for listening.